Hello, and welcome back to another book video and the Mystery Theory channel. Today, I'm going to explain the psychopath, and I mean it. People are giving this book a bad review, but I read it till the end, and I'm going to tell you why people are not rating it better, what I loved about the book, what could have been better, what kind of book this is, who Taylor Adams is, what I think about him, and a lot more. But before I get started, I would love for you to leave a comment, say hi, recommend your favorite thriller book, your favorite Halloween movie. It's that spooky time of the year, and I'm living for it. Yesterday, I decorated the library for the kids' Halloween party, and I am in that spooky vibe. So, I want to thank you for watching and kindly ask you to leave an emoji, say hi, or anything to show your support. I also want to ask you to please like this video, and if you're new, to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. So let's get started. The Last Word is a book I shared with you some in my last video about my October TBR. This book, like I mentioned, is written by Taylor Adams, who wrote my favorite book that was adapted into a movie called No Exit. Now, if you haven't watched it, I think it's super spooky, and it's on, what is it on? Hulu. So when I saw his latest book, which I think it's this one, I needed to read it. I listened to the audiobook as I was reading it. Then I finished it on audio while I was driving, because I live very far away from everything, and I can get a good hour or hour and a half while I'm in the car. And since I got this on CD, I can listen to it in the car. The story, it's about Emma. Emma is in this cabin by herself, well, with her dog, Laika. This house is very isolated. It's in an island in the Pacific Northwest. There are other neighbors. Like back here, you can see a little house but it's not a really close neighbor. So we read the story, and Emma seems like the kind of person that has too much time. She's reading Kindle books. She's downloading several each day because there is something in her that it's bothering her. But she escapes her reality by reading a book. Now, the beginning of the book, it's really slow. Emma's boring. The setting is beautiful. The feeling of this place, it's something I like, but Emma is so not relatable because all we know is she's boring, reading Kindle books. She is watching this house for somebody and she's getting paid to stay there. Like this is a job. But she makes an emphasis on how she can't talk to anybody, like physically she can speak, but her brain won't let her talk to people. She wants to isolate. So, eventually, we learn about a neighbor, which they can see each other from their window, and they write on this whiteboard, and they look through a telescope, I think it was. That's what it was. I'm reading another book about something similar. And so they play hangman. And I don't know if you ever play hangman. I used to all the time when I was a little girl. But I don't see the appeal for a grown woman and a grown man playing hangman. Her from this house and him from his house. And seen through telescope, not talking to each other. Okay. The neighbor is boring. Oh my gosh, this man is so boring. Like it is written as a boring character. He's not. But he is written as a boring character. So we have a boring woman and a boring man writing on a whiteboard and looking through a telescope. Not the story I was hoping, but I kept reading. Eventually in the book, we learn what Emma is running away from, and it's her husband. In the beginning, it seems like he died. She speaks about him like he's dead. But eventually, we learn that something really bad happened, and they lost their little girl. And Emma left her husband and went to this cabin. Now, that's when it starts to get interesting, because now I'm invested in this story, sad story, and now what happened to her makes sense, not makes sense, but the way she acts now makes sense. So now I need to know, what's gonna happen? During the first part of the book, it almost reads as a haunted house, but it's not. There are some smells, some cold air, some movement. She thinks she saw a man looking at her sleep. The neighbor, in one of the scenes, they're playing hangman, and the neighbor is like, "Who's that behind you, Emma?" All written in this whiteboard. And Emma wouldn't turn around, thinking the neighbor was trying to scare her. And then it's a very tense scene, because it's like, no, really, turn around. Who is he? Anyway, in the end, this is a spoilery kind of review, because I need to explain the psychopath. But in the end, there's this man that starts showing up at her door. This man shows up on a camera. The owner of the house sees that there's a man at the door. She contacts the police. She gets Emma a taser. And that's when things change in the book. The story was that man standing outside her house was the owner of the cabin, son, a very disturbed young man. Now, what you know about this book is that she writes a review in the beginning of the book. This book was recommended to Emma by her neighbor. She reads the book, writes a review, and now the man that we saw in the camera is the owner's son, but it's also the author. The twists and turns and scares at the end of this book are amazing. It reminds me of the ending of No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is very spoilery, but I'm not going to give you the details because I think you need to read them to enjoy them. So that man she has a fight with, something happens with him. But everything was a plan from that twisted psychopath of a neighbor that she has. And he has a plan, the neighbor, after incident happened with this man who was the author and the owner's son. Now the neighbor has a plan on how to get rid of her and write a book about it, which will be based on a true story, right? The way that he plans to kill her is my worst nightmare. Every time I read about this way of dying, it gives me the chills, and I can feel myself in that position, and it's so disturbing. But I have to say that Taylor Adams created the neighbor with the most twisted mind. Kind of a genius on how he plotted this whole thing. And what happens in the end to the neighbor and to her after the killing part where she should have died, it is so divine. I just cannot deal with it. So, to me, let me explain. When I went to Goodreads to write a review about this book, which I basically wrote just part of what I just told you without spoiling it. I don't think I spoiled it. I read a review on one of my favorite booktubers that said she DNF'd it, so didn't finish it at 30%. And I'm like, yeah, because it sucks by 30%. Are you kidding me? Keep reading. It gets better. I get that people won't give a chance to a book that has a horrible beginning and that it's not engaging, where you can't engage to the story or the characters. You don't care about them because the author doesn't give you enough information to care about them. But listen, this is the first time that I read a book where the end is worth reading the slower parts. I cannot return this book to the library that I borrowed from another library because we didn't have it here. But I cannot return this book without saying this. It wasn't bad. It had a horrible 1-star beginning of the book, and everything you shouldn't do in a book, it's done here in the beginning. But oh my gosh, this author has the most twisted mind, and he creates some of the worst villains. Machiavellic. Never thought they could do that to you. It's like gasping. I'm gasping. Like I'm listening to this audiobook. I should have called my mom while I was in town with cell service. I couldn't stop the audiobook. It's just like the ending of No Exit when you start learning the mastermind of this crime, of this story. And I'm just saying that this author never read a story like, I never read a book that the characters transform in a way that it's very organic into some of the craziest people out there. Okay, so I think I gave it 3 stars or 4 stars. I don't remember, but the only reason why, it's because of the slow beginning, the not developing of characters before he did, and because this world could have been described better and make it into a more atmospheric kind of read. Another author I like is Riley Sager, and he does have twisty ends of stories, but nothing like him. I think it's a him, isn't it? Yes, it's a him. Here he is. He's a kind of a young guy, isn't he? He's also written the book. Is it Harpin Bridge? I need to read that one too, but I'm just really eager to return this book, and I thought that I better say something before I return it. I think it's worth a read. Actually, I think it's worth listening to it. Because if you're doing some mundane tasks and you can listen to this book, I think you'll get a understanding of the story without having to actually read the words in the beginning that are so slow that can bore you and say, I'm not reading this book. To me, I am heartbroken that so many people don't like it. Because I think it's great, because I think it's a smart book, because I think that sometimes the ending of these books are so stupid that I read a really good book and then I get to the end and I'm like, really? Really? All this build up to tell me that that's how it's gonna end? And on the other hand, there's this kind of book with the best ending, and I hope that somebody takes this world and makes it into a movie, giving us more about the characters. And I don't know, I think it'd be a hit. I don't see really good scary movies coming out, so I think this one, if I had the money, I'd do it myself. So, did you read this book? Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you DNF'd it, would you give it a chance? Maybe start on part 4. This is where all the juicy stuff starts happening. But it kind of starts before. So, if you can get the audiobook, skip chapters if you're not into the story, but I think that the ending of this book, it's great. So try to catch the part where we learn about our story. The actual final scene is cute. I thought it was a little heartwarming. So, I don't know, all kinds of feelings for this one book that I can't stop thinking about. So maybe You should have an extra star for that. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for joining me. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.